Good morning. It's good to be with everyone today. As we gathered this morning, let me share with you words from Lay It Down by Reverend Joan Javier Duval. Here is where you can lay it down. Lay down all you have carried, the weight of the world that has rounded your back, leaving you exhausted and aching. Here is where healing begins, where burdens are set down and alongside one another's, their magnitude does not seem as great. Here is where the door is thrown open and the light can lift away the shadows and what was hidden can now be seen. Here is where you can rest, where nothing is expected, but that you bring all of who you are into the presence of the holy and of this loving community. Come, friends, with hearts open to both the challenges and possibilities that this new day and week bring, with our hearts open to all that inspires, sustains, redeems, and transforms us. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition of which this congregation is a part. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with us at this time. As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to build a Unitarian Universalist community that transforms lives and empowers people to serve the world. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. Our opening hymn this morning is number 38, Morning Has Broken. Please sing along with us at home.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall, like the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Good morning. I'm Wendy, a member of this congregation. If you're visiting us for the first time, I offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are an intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. That means that whoever you are and wherever you are on your own religious journey, you're welcome here. That also means that as Unitarian Universalists, we seek wisdom and inspiration from many sources, but affirm that our own individual experience and conscience is the best source and authority for our beliefs. That also means that we are committed to making our world more compassionate and just, and we hope that you might join one of our many efforts to do so. If you're new to us, I invite you to fill out our visitor form at www.uufr.org/visitor-form. If you do this, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter. Periodically, we have lay-led services here at UUFR. This lay-led service has been in the works for many months. Our worship team today includes Sarah Ford, Jenny Meyer, and Hetty Hollyfield. Our worship theme today is a people of healing. It's one of the many themes of the Soul Matters Network for Chalice Circles and Family Ministry. Please feel free to join us after the service for social hour, immediately after the service, and there are instructions for how to join us in a Zoom room on our website. Now, although we can't greet each other in person today, we can, at this time, greet each other using the chat form on your screen.
I am Trish Chagnon, your Family Ministry Director. Today's service is all about our Soul Matters theme, healing. And I'd like to tell you a story called A Heavy Load, excerpted from Zen Shorts by John J. Muth. Two traveling monks reached a town where there was a young noblewoman waiting to step out of her sedan chair. The rains had made deep puddles, and she couldn't step down without spoiling her silk robes. She stood there looking very cross and impatient. She was scolding her attendants, but they had nowhere to place the packages they held for her, so they couldn't help her across the puddle. Noticing the situation, the older monk quickly picked up the woman on his back, transported her across the water, and gently set her down on the other side. She did not thank him, just shoved him out of the way and departed with her servants and packages. As they continued on their way, the young monk was brooding and preoccupied. After several hours, unable to hold his silence, he spoke out. "That woman back there was very selfish and rude, but you picked her up on your back and carried her. Then she didn't even say thank you." The other monk turned and looked at his young companion. "I set that woman down hours ago," he said. "Why are you still carrying her?" One way that we heal is by letting go of things, especially the reactions of other people, and realizing we can only control our own behavior. This week, I challenge you to think about what hurts you might be holding on to, and whether your attachment to those hurts might stand in the way of your own healing. I am sending you so much love.
This is the time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows of our community. If you'd like to share an individual joy or sorrow, I invite you to do so now using the chat function on your screen. I'd also like to share some joys and sorrows we've received via email. Tom Hawkins and Sylvia Carter share the joy that they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary on Friday, having been married by Reverend Tom Rhodes in this UUFR sanctuary on November 27th, 2010. We wish you a happy anniversary. We also share the sorrow from Jennifer Stevenson Williams. She shares the sorrow that her aunt Tysine died on Wednesday night after contracting COVID-19. She was in a nursing home battling Alzheimer's. As we reflect on the shared joys and sorrows, as well as the joys and sorrows in our own hopes, in our own fears, hopes, in our own lives, let's be together now for a period of silence and stillness, opening ourselves to the Spirit within us, between us, and amidst us, called by many names, but known to every human heart, that leads us toward a fuller experience of life. After the silence, we'll sing hymn 1007, "There's a River Flowing in My Soul." But now, let's be together in stillness and silence.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Everything we do at UUFR is only possible because of the generous financial support so many of you provide. We try to make being generous as convenient and easy as possible. So I invite you to see the instructions that will appear on your screen during our offertory. It is now time for our offering. Please be generous.
Well, much like the young monk and Trist's story, I find that I'm carrying a load of anger and resentment myself these days, mostly occasioned by politics, and you probably know the list. This reckless, self-interested administration, its craven apologists, attacks on the democratic process from the highest office in the land, and silence from many of those whose words might matter. The election is over, but my pack of anger doesn't seem much lighter. I'm not always aware of how angry I am, but it flares up from time to time, like when people drive very, very slowly in parking lots, or when people are not careful enough about COVID, or when people think I'm not careful enough about COVID. Then it roars to life, animated by the circumstances of the moment, but supercharged by the supply of helpless fury that I keep on hand. I wonder if, like the old monk, I could just set it down. Could I let my resentments go even as the wrongs continue to pile up? Anne Lamott said that withholding forgiveness is like drinking rat poison and waiting for the rat to die. Some days, I can almost feel that poison coursing through my veins, harsh and hot. I want it to be drawn out, I do. But I also want the objects of my anger to know how wrong they are. I want them to know that the very earth recoiled in horror when our nation tore little children away from their families at the border, tore them away as a warning to other desperate people who might dare to seek refuge. I want someone to pay for that. My longing for vengeance and my contradictory longing for reconciliation is especially acute when it comes to people in my extended family. I want them to know that I love them unconditionally, but also that I can't possibly love them the way I used to. This is the shame that I share with you today. The last 4 years have taught me that my heart is not as big or as resilient as I used to think it was. I think I could be more loving now if I knew that all these wrong people would be punished in the great beyond. I was taught about heaven and hell at a very young age by extremely earnest people. So I've never quite been able to shake the psychological construct of giant tally books, relentlessly chalking up every wrong. And the thought of those tally books has been comforting to me these last few years. But of course, like many of you, I left behind traditional concepts of heaven and hell long ago, of good people and bad people, of fiery punishment. Now I believe that if there's any afterlife at all, its foundational principle is love. Love that is much bigger than me and my tiny, brittle heart. So how can I think about the afterlife now? Stories and images help human beings grasp greater truths, right? As a Unitarian Universalist, could I draw on the wisdom of many sources, plus my own experience and conscience, to imagine a version of heaven and hell consistent with my principles? One that would help me love and forgive people who seek neither my love nor my forgiveness? I picture someone who I cannot forgive at the gates of my newly imagined heaven. Let's just call him Mitch. The gatekeeper is a giant, bountiful mother. She smells like warm earth and fresh bread, and her arms are the home you've looked for all your life. I imagine her huge hands reaching for this smug, destructive person, and she pulls him against her bosom. And in a voice rich with both sorrow and mirth, I hear her say, "My child, my beloved Mitchell, what in the world were you thinking?" And next, I wasn't expecting this. It's my turn, and I also am gathered in. "My beloved Sarah," she says. "What in the world were you thinking?" And then, in a startling expansion of memory and comprehension and moral capacity, I see my whole life and the impact of my actions, direct and indirect, on everyone else on earth. There aren't any tally marks to number wrongs, just the pain I've caused. Pain that I can now see and feel in merciless detail. Every cruel word in school, every wound that I inflicted on people I love, the myriad ways my wealthy American life exploited people who I never met or even thought about. In this vision of the afterlife, heaven and hell are the same place. You see clearly, and you love purely, and that's the horror of it. It's a beautiful place, oh yes. Sure, the streets are paved with gold, but the newcomers cover themselves with ashes and weep in agony to know what they have done. It's a piteous sound, one that would move you to comfort your worst enemy, which is how I imagine that it works. In this heaven, the people you have wronged eventually succeed in drying your tears. They pull you to your feet and insist that you join them for brunch. It's a you heaven after all. But as you walk through those jasmine-scented streets, you hear the cries of those who will weep for years. And you feel something that was hard to feel on earth. You feel mercy. In the houses of worship where I spent my youth, stories about heaven and hell were presented as real. I know this one is just a story, and a motley pastiche at that. But it comforts me. And from time to time, it helps me set down my anger. And that's what we need the stories we choose to do, to incline us to healing, to help bring forgiveness within our grasp, and to expand our hearts. So may it be.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. I got a wake-up call at 11:54, Friday, September 11th. I was on my way home from babysitting my 2 grandsons when I was broadsided. My car was totaled. I had to be cut from it with the jaws of life. In those moments, as my car spun out of control, the thought that kept running through my head was, I need help. I had to wait until the car finally slid to a stop before I could reach my phone. I could not remember 911. I could only think, call Jim. He'll know what to do. So I called Jim. He said, I can't talk now. I'm talking to the minister. He heard the panic in my voice, though, and listened. It was a shocking interruption to my day. I was so badly shaken, so much so that I could not tell you if I was hurt or not. To make a long story short, it turns out my body was only bruised. Bruises heal, and within a couple of weeks, they were all gone. All of my car's safety features worked as designed. I'm so grateful for those safety features and so grateful for those people that invented them. Wow. The post-accident anxiety, though, takes longer to heal. Whenever I'm faced with a bad situation in my life, I try to figure out what I can learn from it. I try to emerge as a better human being. Like all of us, I've had a few encounters with unfortunate situations, bad jobs, divorce, the loss of a parent, just to name a few. This is the first time that I'm aware of without warning I could have left this life. I'm a Buddhist. We talk about death all of the time. It's a part of life. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed our next breath. One of our common practices is to live a day as if it were our last. See things as if there were no tomorrow. How would it change how we behave? Would we be kinder? Would we be more patient? Would we have more gratitude? I've done this practice many times. I've honestly never done it with the expectation it was my last day. Now I know. Today could in fact be my last day. A friend of mine recently had a health scare. She offered some ideas for healing. She recommended a meditation to deal with the post-accident stress. That helps a lot. She also recommended a book that helped her, A Year to Live by Stephen Levine. He devotes a year to live as if this were in fact his last year on the planet. He offers the readers the opportunity to join him in his journey. He discovered, and I quote, "It was clear though that I thought I was exploring the fear of death. I was actually exploring the fear of life." His life became more fulfilling as he lived this last year of his life. He was able to live each day more mindfully, with less fear and more joy. I've long lived with a lot of anxiety. I wake each morning with a list of to-dos, prefaced with should, that make me feel anxious from the very moment I awake. It's a nearly lifelong habit. Now I took my friend's advice, and I'm working through that book and trying to undo that lifelong habit. What does it look like in my life now? I'm a long-time meditator, but I never set aside a special place in my house to meditate. Now I have a special place. As I go about my daily task, sweep the floor, clean the kitchen, prepare a meal, I focus on that task and that task alone. I notice how calming it feels when I walk in the woods. When I walk without listening to books or music, so I can be present to my surroundings. When I play with my grandson, I let go and allow myself to be in that moment with him. I let him lead me in that play. It's such a great reminder of how joyful play is and how I never let myself do that. I give myself the gift of presence and patience. I forgive myself for those times that I cannot. I've not perfected it yet. It's a process, not an on-off switch. And we get good at what we practice. During my divorce, my life seemed so bleak. And my sister sent me flowers. The enclosure said, "Take baby steps." And that's what I'm trying to do now. Take baby steps into this new life of presence.
Ready? You don't have the power to make life fair, but you do have the power to make life joyful. Jonathan Lockwood Huey. When I was completing my master's program in library science, one of the first classes that I had to take was on information literacy, which is the ability to find, evaluate, and then apply information into your life. And I was so surprised to learn that the first step in being information literate was the idea of knowing you needed to go find information and then actually going and getting it. That seems so obvious to me. I mean, why would you even need to write that down? If you need something, you go get it, right? Why would you have to put it down? But as I watched things and people and considered that thought, I was amazed at how many people weren't doing that. They'd be sitting there with some problem or situation that could potentially be made a lot better if they would just go find the solution. And they never did. They never went to go find the solution. They either thought it wasn't real, or that it was too hard, or maybe even that it wasn't necessary. And so they just sat there. They sat there with their problem and never let themselves get anything better. The quote this morning that I read reminds me of the power that we have in our decisions, and that choices are often the first step we have to do or not do anything in our lives, including the first step to heal. There are two critical decisions I think of when I think of healing, and in fact, they're the same two decisions that come up for anything that we have to get done. And the first decision is actually deciding to do it, and then putting on purpose the action that takes to get it done. The second decision is the meaning that we give it, and the reason I want to talk about these two decisions is because without them, in truth, healing can't happen. I mean, the first step is always deciding, what do we want? Can we do it? And is it worth the effort? And healing's like change, any change. It's something people say they want, and then they remember it's a little uncomfortable. Because healing requires something of you. It requires honesty, it requires vulnerability, and sincerity. And depending on the depth of healing that needs to happen, it can be painful, not just uncomfortable. And we work really hard to avoid uncomfortable. A modern society allows us to easily hide from uncomfortable things, but it's the uncomfortable things that help us grow. That's the stuff that propels us into being our best, into being our highest. And it all starts with a choice that we're not okay. Something has to change. It's fueled by the hope of something different, the exhaustion of what currently is, and the faith that the effort will lead to something better. And we all have something to heal. It might be physical or emotional or mental, but it's there, and it starts by acknowledging it's there. Now, the second critical decision in this is in deciding your meaning. You see, we don't remember that we actually have control over this. We forget that we're doing it all the time for everything. Our brains are meaning-making machines. It is what we do. And thank God, because without meaning, there's no purpose. And if there's no purpose, there's no reason to live. Our brains are creating meaning so effortlessly that you don't remember that all of those meanings are choices. When something happens in your life, you decide what it means. You provide yourself the why. It's not preordained as fact, it's a belief you have about something that's happened. So you have the privilege to decide what the healing is for and why whatever has happened in your life has happened. At 3 years old, my son was diagnosed with autism, and I remember crying through the follow-up of his first evaluation. I went through a tremendous process of denial, proclaiming that he couldn't possibly have autism. He didn't act like somebody who had autism. And I was naive enough to think that I could deny this fact in my life and discredit it. And I spent months not doing anything about it. And looking back, I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of a son that I didn't have. And I spent so much time asking myself, why? Why is this happening? Why my son? Why me? And then one day, I realized that I was learning the power of personal perception through my son's experience. I was beginning to understand on an immense new level what it means to say that someone sees the world differently than you do. And that realization has blossomed into a powerful meaning for my life. It's been one that's propelled me to open doors, experience things that I might never have experienced before. See, our lives are interconnected, they're dynamic. You can't point your finger at something and say, this happened because of this. And you have influence over things in your life, but you can't control what comes at you. But you do have the choice to decide what it means. And that decision is important because without it, we can't heal. We can't make change. Without making those choices, you might decide that what's hurt you is somebody else's fault. There's not anything you can do about it. It's on them, right? Or maybe you decide that it's just the roll of the dice. Life's like that. You got unlucky, so there's no reason to try to heal. Or maybe you think that you deserve it, that you're being punished for some sin or error that you did so long ago. So you don't try to move forward. You don't try to find the solution. See, the reasons that you choose mean everything about how you act, think, and feel about everything that you're living. And the difference between coasting through life on autopilot and living life to the fullest are those decisions. When you choose to let things just be, you miss the opportunity to create a magnificent life, not just an okay one. And making the decision to look at and love the things that have hurt you, that's what provides meaning for powerful, powerful healing. And it's that healing that gives you the opportunity to create a really beautiful life. After our meditation, please join us in our closing hymn this morning, number 1064, Blue Boat Home. Thank you.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, hurling questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim soul, making our way by the light of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
We invite you to join us for social hour in one of our Zoom rooms immediately following the service. But for now, as we end this time of worship together, may we do so with ever more love for one another, with ever more gratitude for the precious gift of life that we share this very day, and with ever more peace in our hearts and hope for our own lives and the world we share. Amen.